Hello all, good evening and welcome to yet another live session of Narayana IAS Academy. So as all of you know, this is Sureka Bhaskar here to present the daily news analysis. So for today's discussion, as usual, we picked up trending and very important topics from both the Hindu as well as the Indian Express, which becomes extremely important as well as relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. So with no further delay, let us actually start with our daily routine, that is our daily motivation. So the motivation for today is very apt and exact. Okay, so how many ever teachers you have, how many ever mentors or trainers you have, your teachers won't make you smart. However, you are the ones who are actually responsible to increase your own smartness. And the same way, mentors won't actually make you rich. At the same time, the trainers won't make you fit. So people will only help you. That is, we are here as educators and trainers only to help you and guide you. But ultimately, your growth is actually your responsibility. So having said and having attained the biggest motivation for the day, with no further delay, let us quickly move on to today's discussion. And before that, I would actually like to bring to you a very exciting offers and products that Narayana IAS Academy actually offers. So we have actually come up with a 1-year prelims comes mains integrated course for the 2026 UPSC CSE examination, and also we have a 2-year prelims comes main integrated course for 2027 exam. And if you actually have an overview about the program, here we actually cover, that is the course actually covers the prelims, mains as well as your interview preparation, including your general studies, your CSAT, etc. And also we actually provide you specialized and tailored courses for the current affairs, as well as a structured micro schedule for time efficient learning will actually be provided. And why choose Narayana IAS Academy? Because we are actually up with this 800 plus hours of general studies as well as CSAT online classes, which will actually be taken for you every day. That is, everyday live classes will be there, where we actually cover each topic comprehensively in a solid manner, where the basics or the concepts are also clarified. Also, we actually have a 200 hours of current affairs classes, where we actually provide you the update of the relevant current affairs for the examination, which will actually help you ace both the prelims as well as the mains examination. Then we've actually come up, that is the experts in our R&D team have come up with a strategic micro schedule, which is a detailed daily study plan that will actually optimize your efforts, and it actually keeps the students very organized so that you don't lose track in this preparation. Also, we have experts who are faculties who have been experienced educators, and they are well versed in the UPSC syllabus requirements. They've analyzed the PYQs. They have done enough groundwork and research work in order to consolidate and curate the materials for you. And also we have regular testing through the through our test series, as well as the feedback is actually welcome from each and every one of you. And also the study materials that the Narayana IAS team, that is the research and development team, actually provides includes the Narayana IAS study kit. This is nothing but there are 12 Navigator NCERT books as well as 21 General Studies Navigator books, which actually gives you sufficient foundation for your preparation. And also we have prelims as well as mains PYQs, which have been categorized by topic, that is thematic categorization has been done from our end for you. Next, we have our digital resources. That is, we will be providing 250 plus model answers that have been curated by our UPSC interview appeared senior faculties, that actually targets high probability or potential topics that can actually appear in both your prelims, the mains, as well as the interview stage of your examination. Also, we have a monthly Navigator Current Affairs magazine, which is actually a comprehensive and a one-stop solution for all your current affairs. Okay, so there is a 360-degree coverage of each and every topic that is actually exam relevant, and whatever dimensions have actually been covered has also been covered in our previous Navigator magazines that will be released in our yearly edition or the first anniversary special edition, where we will actually analyze the hit rate for you. Okay, now moving forward, now coming to our discussion. Today's discussion actually entails four important topics. All four have actually been picked up from The Hindu. However, you can actually, find few of these articles in the Indian Express as well. Okay. So predominantly, we have actually picked up, these many articles. Uh, can you just help me with the pen? Yeah, so here the first topic for discussion is India's cities, their non-communicable disease burden. So this particular article has actually been picked up from page number 6 of The Hindu, and this, as the topic suggests, actually discusses about what has been the burden of non-communicable diseases in India, especially in the urban areas. Okay, so here we'll be discussing about what is the concept of non-communicable disease, what are the causes, the consequences, what has been the global burden, and specifically in India, why is it actually, confined to the urban areas, that is, there has been increase in the number of cases of NCDs. And also we'll be looking at the global as well as the national initiatives. Okay. Next topic has been picked up from page number 12 of The Hindu, Center working on national policy document on female labor force participation. So here, women actually form an important, part of the syllabus, because they unfortunately fall under the vulnerable section of the population. And also, you actually see a lot of volatility in the policies, as well as, gaps in the policy formulation with respect to that of women. So here we will actually see what is the employment rate of women. So here we'll be discussing about the labor force participation rate, and as a part of it we'll be discussing about what has been the female labor force participation rate, whether it has increased in the urban, whether it has increased in the urban areas when compared to that of the rural areas. And finally we'll discuss about the concept of care economy. Okay, so how does focusing on building the infrastructure in care economy going to improve the female labor force participation rate is what we'll discuss in the second article. And moving forward, the third article has been picked up from science section of The Hindu. In our fight against climate change, should the seas turn the tide? So this particular article actually discusses about carbon sequestration. Okay, so it actually talks about how oceans act as carbon sinks, okay, in handling the climate change. So here we'll be looking at certain biotic as well as the abiotic technologies which are useful for this carbon sequestration in order to deal with the particular menace of climate change. Now moving forward, the last article that we'll be discussing is Trump wants BRICS nations of 100% tariffs if they undermine the US dollar. So this particular article has been picked up from page number 14 of The Hindu. So you know that the person who has been elected to take term as the president of United States, Mr. Donald Trump, he'll be actually taking, charge, or, he'll be assuming office from January 2025. And he has actually said that in case the BRICS nation, right, this is that, intergovernmental grouping or a regional grouping, if this grouping actually takes any measure in order to use an alternative currency which will undermine the value or the dominance of dollars, which actually is used in the global trade as well as finances, then US, that is the United States, will levy 100% tariff on these nations. So this article actually discusses about de-dollarization. That is, certain countries like Iran as well as other regional grouping, we actually want to look at alternatives where we can use other currencies and reduce our dependence or dependency on these dollars. So that is what is called as de-dollarization. So here we will actually see how and why dollar has actually emerged as such a big standard global currency. Okay, so this is what we'll actually be discussing in this particular article. So let us actually move and discuss the very first article, India's cities, their non-communicable disease burden. So here we'll be discussing about what are non-communicable diseases. Okay, so these are very chronic and long-term diseases. Okay, so these are mainly, they are not infectious diseases. Okay, like infectious diseases, as in it is actually transferred from one person to another, right? So they are infectious diseases. These are chronic, long-term, non-infectious diseases which can be caused due to number of factors, whether be it your your genes, that is genetic passage, or you can say genetic transmission from your ancestors or from your parents. And it can also be due to your addiction, that is addiction to alcohol, increased smoking, etc. And it can also be due to our behavioral traits or activities. Okay, so in this particular article we'll be discussing about non-communicable diseases and how is it actually important in order to be curbed with respect to India or the world moving towards the sustainable development goal target, or which actually focuses on health, right? Health and well-being. This is SDG 3. So particularly containing this particular NCDs, or reducing the premature deaths. Okay, so that is actually goal 3.4 of the sustainable development goals. So here this particular topic becomes very important for your general science under prelims examination, or and for the mains examination it can be mapped to GS paper 2 health and GS paper 3 science. Now let us quickly move forward and understand that there has been a previous year question which was actually asked in the year 2021 with respect to the context of the hereditary diseases. Consider the following statements. Okay, so these kind of diseases, the mode of transport, and whether it's a zoonotic disease or not, how it is actually transmitted, all this becomes very important for your prelims and mains examination. Now, why this particular article is in the news is that there has been growing burden of non-communicable diseases, specifically in India's urban areas. So that too, in India's urban areas, what happens is that we have the marginal communities. Okay, so they are being affected by this particular NCDs, is what the recent report is actually saying. So who are these marginal communities? They may be, the gig workers, they may be the migrants, as well as the slum dwellers. Okay, so this is what this article is actually talking about. So now let us quickly move forward. Let us see what are non-communicable diseases. So non-communicable diseases actually happen to be the long-term chronic diseases. They can either be caused by genetics, that is, you get your genes of your parents or your ancestors. They can be physiological. Okay. So now let us quickly move forward. Let us see what are non-communicable diseases. So non-communicable diseases actually happen to be the long-term chronic diseases. They can either be caused by genetics, that is, you get your genes of your parents or your ancestors. They can be physiological. Okay. So now let us What's wrong with move forward. Let us see what are non-communicable diseases. So non-communicable diseases actually happen to be the long-term chronic diseases. They can either be caused by genetics, that is, you get your genes of your parents or your ancestors. They can be physiological. Okay. क्रोमकास्ट कौन किया? I don't know. Who's going? क्रोमकास्ट हो गया. So now let us. What's wrong with Yeah, so we're extremely sorry for the technical glitch that actually happened in between. So now let us actually resume with what are non-communicable diseases. As I explained, these non-communicable diseases are long-term chronic disorders that can either be genetic, that is we actually take up certain or we actually inherit certain genes from our ancestors or parents, okay, such as diabetes, and also it can be physiological. So what do you mean by physiological? Physiological is due to our behavior like excessive tobacco consumption, excessive smoking, etc., or consumption of drugs, and all these are causes of increased addiction that we actually have. And it can also be due to the environmental factors, and it can be due to the lifestyle factors. So these are, as I told you, not infectious diseases, and this includes cardiovascular diseases. This actually includes the heart attacks, or it can be strokes, okay, or it can be cancers as well. So this can also be sometimes be genetic. And next, moving on, it can be chronic respiratory conditions. What are chronic respiratory conditions? They actually include diseases like asthma. They actually include chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases and so on. Okay, so these are your non-communicable diseases, and also it actually includes diabetes. Okay, so diabetes is actually of three types, right? Type 1, type 2 and type 3. Majorly this type 3 is actually supposed to be a non-communicable disease that actually happens because of your lifestyle disorders. Okay, sorry, type 2. Type 3 is actually your gestational diabetes that actually occurs during your pregnancy. Okay, do you understand? Now, actually moving forward, causes and consequence of non-communicable diseases. The causes, as you know, it is actually genetic, it is physiological, it is environmental as well as behavioral factors, as we saw. What are these? It can actually be excessive use of tobacco, or it can be harmful alcohol consumption, it can be excessive consumption of junk, that is unhealthy diet. You do not exercise, that is physical inactivity. There is actually obesity, high blood pressure, as well as raised cholesterol levels. So these are all the causes of the non-communicable disease. What are the consequences of non-communicable disease? They actually cause disability at a very young age. It will actually reduce your productivity and also lowers the quality of life that you have, and will result in premature deaths. Okay, that is, your life expectancy itself will reduce. And now if you actually see, overall they actually account for 7 out of 10 global deaths. Okay, that is predominantly relevant to that of your lifestyle as well as the environmental factors like your air pollution, because of which you actually have asthma as well as chronic respiratory diseases, etc. Next one, NCDs also heavily impact the economies. That is what I told you, right? That actually reduces the productivity of the individual and reduces the working years. That is, during the prime working years, if you are actually getting affected by it, then what happens? There is actually an economic cost also in terms of your productivity, and also it actually increases your healthcare cost. Okay, so this is what is your causes and consequences of NCDs. Now recently there was India Health of the Nation's States study report that was actually released by the ICMR, okay, the Council of Medical Research, that actually has said that NCDs in India, this has actually been increased significantly from around 40% to around 60% from the year 1990 to 2016. So there has been a significant surge in the cases of NCDs in India, and also this disease actually accounts for around 55% of dailies in India. What is dailies? This is disability adjusted life years. This is nothing but the disease which is actually prevalent over a population. Okay, so out of that, 55% is actually constituted by this non-communicable diseases. So this actually causes a significant impact. That is, it actually contributes to the disease burden in the country. And also it has been found that more developed states, for example, in southern states, there are actually more, number of NCD cases when compared to that of lesser developed states. And what are the key risk factors? Again, the research or the report has observed that tobacco, alcohol consumption, poor diets and lack of physical activities are the responsible, factors, the key driving factors of this NCD. And here, if you actually see the report, here you can see 60.46 lakh people are actually being killed by NCDs in India, and 86% of the deaths from NCDs actually occur in the low as well as the middle income countries, and 66 actually of the total deaths in India were caused by NCDs. Okay, and then you actually have few data which is written here: how many deaths due to diabetes, how many due to respiratory diseases, due to cancer, as well as the CBD, that is your cardiovascular diseases. Now, having understood what do you mean by the NCDs, what are the causes as well as consequences, and we also saw what is the recent ICMR report on the trends of this prevalence of NCDs in India. Now, let us understand what are the health challenges, because the article today in the Hindu editorial section, it actually talks about this NCDs, leave alone developed states, leave alone underdeveloped states. Here the precedence of NCDs or incidences of these NCDs are actually more specifically in the urban areas. Why? Because as per the World Bank report 2022, it is actually said that 49% of around this urban population, they actually live in the slums. Okay, so because of large congestion and also very very poor sanitary or environmental standards, and also the slums are actually occupied by these daily wage workers, right? Like you actually have the gig workers and then the sanitation workers, etc., where the conditions of living is actually not very conducive, and also they do not have all these social security benefits, they don't have insurance, and also they don't have accessibility to the primary health sector. So that is what it is. It actually says that the marginalized population in the urban areas, they actually face triple health burden. So what are the triple health burden? Triple health burden is nothing but, one is actually your hazardous work environments. Okay, so their living work environment is also not very hygiene, because you actually have the sanitation workers, etc. Okay, so they don't have a properly sanitized work environment. Next one is limited healthcare access, because all the public healthcare systems in India, either it is not accessible or it has actually failed to cater to their needs. Next one is financial vulnerability. So since they are actually not covered in many of the schemes, what happens? It's very unfortunate that the out of pocket expenditure, that is their own expenditure for the health, has actually increased, and that takes a toll on their financial stability. So ultimately what happens? There is lower quality of life or standard of living. Next one, in the urban areas, there is actually increased access to this tobacco as well as alcohol consumption. And here if you say, however, the NFHS, that is the National Family Health Data, has actually said that tobacco and alcohol consumption has declined. However, if you see NCDs like hypertension, diabetes, obesity, all this has been increased. Okay, and also we do not know about its symptoms ahead in time, because this is called as a silent epidemic. Okay, so these cardiovascular diseases, they actually do not leave any kind of significant symptoms. So it is always, it is actually, we cannot prevent it before it actually occurs. So this is what it has been said here. Next one, it is the poorly implemented policies in urban India. So India actually has a national NCD surveillance policy. However, its implementation is actually not full-fledged. Okay, so that is what it actually says here. And this is also because there is overburdened urban health systems, because there are a lot of people, right? So patients to doctors, patients to nurse ratio is significantly low in India. Also, there is a rapid urbanization as well as poor urban designs, that is the drainage as well as the sewage systems are actually not contained, or they are not designed properly. Also, universal health coverage to prevent the out-of-pocket expenditure is actually has also not met the required standards. Next one, the public health systems that is actually supposed to serve the lowest rung, that is the lowest 40% of the population, that has also been inadequate in India. So these are all the challenges that India actually faces, and that is why we have higher rates of NCDs, particularly in the urban areas. Now coming on to the key recommendations to address this NCDs that has been given by the article. First one, they say that you need to leverage technology. That is, we need to use real-time monitoring tools, okay, in order to identify the diseases earlier itself, in order to provide very tailored consultations as well as treatments to the patients. And also you need to use all the data as well as data driven insights in order to come up with good healthcare policy. So this is the first one, that is leverage the technology, use all the data. Next one, you need to strengthen the primary healthcare. That is, you need to bring about an a system where there is universal access. It has to be affordable, it has to be publicly run primary healthcare solutions and policies. Next one, you need to bring about community-led health initiatives. Okay, here we need to actually collaborate with the urban communities in order to set up the NCD surveillance, also encourage preventive care, and also we need to bring about a lot of awareness about these non-communicable diseases. And finally, foster collaborative approaches. This is, you need to bring a lot of stakeholders. Okay, so here you need to involve your employers, we need to involve schools, we need to involve municipalities. Okay, why? In order to integrate the promotion of health along with the urban planning and related policies. Okay, so this is what is this, that is multi-stakeholder collaboration is actually required apart from leveraging the technology and promoting community-led health initiatives. And finally, we need to build sustainable systems. This is actually to emphasize preventive measures, and we need to reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure so that all we have an inclusive health system which is actually accessible and affordable to the people. Moving on, what are the global initiatives in order to achieve NCDs is that? First is that we have the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 3.4, that focuses on reducing the premature deaths which are actually caused from the NCDs by 1/3 by 2030. Very, very important. And what is the goal is also important. And an umbrella term for SDG 3 is actually what? Health and well-being. Okay, so this you need to know. Next is WHO Global Action Plan. This also targets 25% reduction in premature deaths that have been caused by NCDs by 2025. Next, we have the WHO Tobacco Framework, which is actually an international treaty which actually aims to reduce the use of tobacco and its health impacts. Next is UN High Level Meeting on NCDs. This actually took place in 2018. This increased the political commitment in order to prevent and control the NCDs. Finally, we have NCD Alliance, which is nothing but it was a global network for policy changes as well as to encourage investments in policies that actually aim to reduce this NCD as well as management. Now moving forward, what have been India's initiatives? First initiative is National Program for NCDs. Okay, so here it actually focuses on providing infrastructure, it provides awareness, it provides early diagnosis and treatment of NCDs under National Health Mission. Very, very important. Moving forward, next is strengthening the cancer care. So here it focuses on establishing state cancer institutes and tertiary care centers. Next one is Fit India movement. You need to, it actually promotes a lot of fitness through the Ministry of Youth Affairs as well as Ayush. Next, we have the Ayushman Bharat Wellness Centers. So this actually provides wellness programs and community level communication. Also, we have Affordable Medicines Initiative, right? That actually has Amrit outlets as well as Jan Aushadhi stores, which actually this Jan Aushadhi actually provides generic medicines at affordable prices, and Amrit outlets, it provides cancer and cardiovascular drugs at discounted rates. And finally, Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Suraksha Yojana, very, very important. This focuses on oncology in AIIMS as well as the other upgraded institutions. Okay, so this is what is India's initiatives. And here, a very important, step that has actually been brought about by Narayana IAS Academy is that we actually conduct, or we are going to conduct, a live webinar session which is actually scheduled to be on 10th December 2024, and the timings will be 10:30 a.m. to 12 noon. And here, as you actually see towards the advertisement, you actually find a scanner where all the interested aspirants as well as the other people can actually scan it and get yourself registered in order to gain insights into how well can you better prepare for the UPSC CSE examination, and also in common terms, how upgraded can you be in your life. Okay, so please, as it's better late than never, do register now and do attend this one insightful webinar. Okay, now moving forward, let us discuss the second article that we've actually picked forward. Center working on national policy document on female labor force participation. So what do you mean by female labor force participation? Is something very, very important. Okay, so the data on employment and unemployment is provided by the PLFS survey. Okay, this is periodic labor force participation survey. So how many people, or what is the workforce who are actually employed and how many are not employed, who are the working age population, all that is actually provided by the PLFS survey. Okay, and also this actually gives the data on LFPR, that is labor force participation rate. This is nothing but the percentage of persons who are a part of the workforce. Workforce is what? People who are employed or who are seeking employment. Okay, so this is the labor force participation rate. And similarly, what do you mean by female labor force participation rate? So this is percentage of female in the working age. Okay, so this has actually increased by around 12%. Okay, so earlier in the year around 2016 or 17, I think, yeah, it was actually around 23.3%, and now it has actually increased to around 32%. Okay, and this surge is also attributed to the rural sectors when compared to that of the urban sectors. Okay, so as you know, women per se is an important topic, and also these terms like women labor force participation rate, that also becomes very, very important. And here the article discusses about a particular term called care economy, and that we'll actually be discussing in detail. So this particular topic becomes important for both your prelims and specifically your mains. It is under GS paper 3 employment as well as GS paper 2 women empowerment. Now moving forward, there has been a question in the previous years, in one of the years, specifically 2019 mains examination. What are the continued challenges for women in India against time and space? So women again becomes a very, very important topic. So why this particular article is in the news is that the government, that is the central government, is actually planning to bring a national policy document, okay, in order to strengthen the care economy, in order to improve female workforce participation in India. We saw what is the female workforce participation. So why this has actually come into the picture? Because recently there has been a World Bank report that has actually noticed that there has been a significant decline in the participation of women in the employment, specifically after the marriage and after children. Okay, so this is what it is. Let us actually see what does the World Bank report actually says. The World Bank report has actually noted that there has been significant decline in the women's labor force participation after marriage in India. And therefore, it actually says now it's high time we need to improve the caregiving infrastructure, because if you know, most of the women after marriage, what happens? They are not allowed to work. They face a number of barriers. Immediately after the marriage, they actually have to serve the family. They actually have, the aging parents-in-law. They need to take care. So what happens because of all these, and also due to relocation, or you can say they actually have to change the location and move in with their husbands. So what happens is that there are a lot of barriers, and thereby they actually drop out of the workforce. So their participation in the workforce is actually not there. And also this article actually says that, sorry, the report actually says that they are involved in this caregiving. Okay, so that is why it is called as a care economy, taking care of the elderly, taking care of the children, taking care of their what to say, other people who are dependent on them. So this is what is called as the care economy. So they are saying, when these many or significant number of women are involved in care economy, why don't we actually start with the creches? Why don't we start with the Anganwadis, where women are given formal employment so that they actually come back and be a part of the workforce, where they are also paid for it. So this is what we are going to discuss about. Okay, so moving forward, what did the recent World Bank report reveal? So, the World Bank report actually says women actually have two kinds of barriers. One is marriage penalty. Next one is the child penalty. So, what do you mean by marriage penalty? The report actually notes that when a woman actually gets married, say she gets married at the age of 25 years, what happens? She actually decides voluntarily or involuntarily, or forcefully, she actually decides to walk out of the workforce, and that actually continues for at least 5 years minimum. That's what the report has actually found. Okay, so next one is child penalty. After she actually give birth to a child, what happens is that her role in caregiving actually increases. So what happens? She ultimately she is actually dropped out of the workforce. Do you understand? So in India, the women employment rate has dropped by 12 percentage points after marriage, whereas you actually see, men experience a 13 percentage point premium upon marriage. That is a number, that is percentage of men actually it has increased after the marriage of how much they are actually employed. It's very funny, right? Only after marriage these men actually search for job, that too not voluntarily. They actually do it and they pressurize their women not to go to the job. Wow, look at the irony. So here, what are women in India doing? If you can see here, you can see 32.8% of the females are there in the labor force, of which 19.7% are self-employed women. Then you see 6.8 are casual labor, and next 5.3 percentage are regular wage or salaried, and then you have 1.1 percentage who are unemployed. Okay, that is who are searching for a job. So they actually form a part of the female labor force, and the remaining 67 percentage, these are the women who are outside the labor force, where domestic duties, okay, unpaid domestic duties, washing utensils, washing clothes, then sleep, rest, wake up, make tea, repeat. This is what women majorly and very sadly they actually perform. So here they actually perform domestic duties, and 14.1% domestic duties, along with they actually perform tailoring, weaving, etc. in order to fill their pockets. Okay, this is one thing. Next one, 11.3 percentage have attended educational institutions, and 4.1 are actually the rentiers, that is those who actually get rents. Okay, those who are under pension, then remittances recipients, etc. And 0.9% are they belong to the differently abled category, and next one, 1.2%, it actually involves the others. Okay, so this is the sad state of women in India. So this is what the World Bank report has also found out. So here, let's dwell into this very important and interesting economy term, that is care economy. This is nothing but it is a particular sector of economic activities where we actually provide care. Either it can be paid, and mostly it is unpaid. So here it is a sector of economic activities which provides care, paid and unpaid, for the present and the future population, and it can include either direct care or indirect care. Direct care is what? Like you're feeding a baby. Indirect care is what? Cooking, cleaning, health care, then education, okay, other personal as well as domestic services that the women perform. Now moving forward, how can care economy improve the female workforce participation? Now we know, right, a major number of women, That is, they actually form a part of this care economy where they are unpaid. And also you have the ILO report that actually says 53% of the women in India, they actually remain outside the labor force due to caregiving responsibilities which are unpaid, I told you. So you need to focus on building this caregiving infrastructure, like it can be the creches, it can be the daycare centers, it can be elder care facilities. So what you do at home for free, you can be paid to do that, right? So when you're good at it, never do it for free. This is one lesson that you learn. So even if it's caregiving and if you're good at it, don't do it for free. So how can the care economy actually improve the female workforce participation? Next one. So when we know that there are good centers where the elderly at home are taken care of, the children are taken care of, now what happened? The already, the share of women who are already in a part of the workforce, they can actually resume work, right? So they can actually rejoin the workforce. So here also you have increased it, and there also in the elderly care centers you have actually increased this, thereby contributing to the female workforce. So ILO, that is the labor organization, has said that it is going to, that is, this care economy is going to generate around 11 million new jobs by 2030, and nearly 70% of these jobs are going to be backed by women. So this is what the ILO report has actually stated. Now moving on to the next article. In a fight against climate change, could the seas turn the tide? So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about a particular concept that is called as marine carbon dioxide removal, as well as global warming and climate change. This becomes very important for your prelims examination as well as mains. For prelims, it's under environment and climate change, and for mains, it's under GS paper 3, environmental pollution and degradation. So all of you actually know that there are a lot of talks around climate change, and you actually feel sometimes the extremes of temperature, right? Either it's too hot or too cold, and it is snowing in Saudi Arabia. So all these are results of climate change. Okay, so one major contributor of climate change is this release of greenhouse gases. Okay, so these greenhouse gases, which actually comprises of methane, then this carbon dioxide, etc., this actually gets trapped in the atmosphere, and that actually leads to increased temperature, and this temperature further leads to the glaciers actually melting down, and that melting down of glaciers is actually resulting in the submergence of the coastal areas and so on, thereby resulting in a lot of catastrophes, right? So in this light, what happens, they are actually saying that we are coming up with a lot of techniques as well as technologies where the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere can be absorbed and it can be sequestered. That is, it can actually be stored beneath the surface for centuries or for hundreds of years. Okay, so this is what, so one such technology is this marine carbon dioxide removal. So now let us quickly understand what do you mean by carbon sinks. So once in the year 2021, there was a prelims question on blue carbon. What is blue carbon? It's the amount of carbon that has been captured by the oceans and the coastal ecosystem. This you need to definitely know. So having said that, here we'll actually see. So the marine carbon dioxide removal, MCDR, is actually emerging as a potential solution in order to enhance the potential, of the oceans. See, oceans generally are called as the, blue lungs, okay, of the earth. Why is it called the lungs of the earth? Because of its immense capacity in order to absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and to store it. Okay, so that is why they are called as the carbon sinks. So here further, with this marine carbon dioxide removal technology, they are trying to remove the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and enable the oceans to actually store it more. So this is what it is in order to mitigate the climate change. So why are the oceans actually potential carbon sinks? What are carbon sinks? Carbon sinks are nothing but the systems that can actually absorb more carbon dioxide than the amount which they actually release. So this is what is called as the carbon sinks. And I told you oceans are called as Earth's blue lung because they absorb carbon dioxide and they help in the regulation of climate change. Also, you should know oceans have a specific heat, okay? That is, they can absorb immense amount of carbon dioxide, but also make sure that the temperature is not significantly increased. Okay, so that is one of the major and a very good property of the oceans. And you can see the ocean so far has actually sequestered, that is absorbed around 25% of the human induced carbon dioxide emissions, and also 90% of the excess heat that has been generated by the GHGs because of the properties. So what are the different properties? Their physical properties, their chemical properties, as well as biological properties. So now we'll actually see. So you can see this circulation. Here you have the air-sea exchange, and then there's primary production, biological carbon storage, physical carbon storage. All that we will actually see in the next slide. Okay. So moving forward, what are all the different, I told you, right, the oceans actually have different potential, or they have the different properties. First, let's see what is the physical properties. First, the CO2 dissolution in water. The oceans are actually having a bigger surface area. So what happens, this larger surface area actually helps in the easier exchange of gases between the atmosphere and the ocean. So what happens is that the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere readily dissolves in this ocean. So that is why it actually absorbs carbon dioxide. Okay, so that is why this is actually one of the physical properties of the ocean. Next one is ocean circulation. So you might have actually heard about these ocean currents, right? So it is nothing but the movement of the water. So what happens, the ocean currents actually take away this surface water that has absorbed the carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is the ocean circulation. It actually moves this particular carbon dioxide rich surface water through its circulation. Next one, the biological properties. First one is photosynthesis. The surface water actually has a number of phytoplanktons, right? Phytoplanktons, during the process of photosynthesis, actually absorb a lot of carbon dioxide. So how does photosynthesis actually takes place? It's absorption of carbon dioxide, and then it actually releases oxygen back, right? So due to this photosynthesis process of the phytoplanktons, what happens? The carbon dioxide gets absorbed, and when these phytoplanktons actually die, they actually are, what to say, they get deposited at the ocean bottom floor. So it actually holds the carbon, and the carbon is sequestered. Next one is food chain contribution. What do you mean by food chain? These are actually linear links of organisms, right? So this actually starts from the producer, and then it moves to the consumer, and then we have the decomposers. Okay, so this is how there is actually transfer of energy. Do you understand? So this is what the producer, it can actually be, a herbivore, and it can be, the consumer can be a carnivore, or it can be an omnivore also. And then you have the apex predation, and finally we have the decomposers like the bacteria, etc. So this is what it is. So here the producers, it can be grass, etc., and that has been consumed by the consumer, depending upon whether it is a primary consumer, the secondary consumer, or tertiary consumer. Okay, so this is what it is: producer, consumer, as well as the decomposer. And this is how the carbon also actually gets transferred from one organism to another organism, and finally when the organism dies, that actually gets, what to say, that actually reaches the bed of the ocean floor. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, the chemical property, okay, conversion of carbon dioxide. So what do you mean by conversion of carbon dioxide? What happens when carbon dioxide actually is absorbed by the ocean water? What happens? It actually results in the formation of H2CO3, that is the carbonic acid. Okay, so this carbonic acid actually has the capacity of dissociating into two. It can either become a bicarbonate, HCO3, or it can become a carbonate. Okay, So in these two forms, the carbon dioxide is comparatively stable and it stays there for a lot of centuries or for a long period of time. Next one is formation of carbonate minerals. Okay, so what happens, a lot of carbon that is actually being absorbed, that what happens gets stored in the shells of the organisms or skeletons, or you can see in the corals. So when they die, it is actually preserved in the ocean itself. Next one is heat absorption. I already told you oceans have a high specific heat capacity. That is, despite its capacity of absorbing huge amounts of carbon dioxide, what happens? It takes care that there is no significant change in the temperature. So these are the properties of the ocean water. However, if you see, because of the increased absorption and sequestration of carbon dioxide by the ocean waters, there is increased ocean acidification. So this is actually disrupting the biogeochemical cycles, and thereby it is actually affecting the marine ecosystems. And this is where our marine carbon dioxide removal has actually emerged. So now let us see what is marine carbon dioxide removal. It is nothing but a set of strategies, okay, which actually aims to enhance the capacity of the ocean in order to actually capture as well as store carbon dioxide, okay. And this actually uses a number of natural as well as engineered techniques in order to enhance the ocean carbon sequestration. Let us see what are the natural methods. So first one is the biotic approaches. The first one is mangrove restoration. That is what it is called as the blue carbon ecosystem. Why is it called as a blue carbon ecosystem? Because the blue carbon is what? The amount of carbon that has been captured or it has been stored by the ocean ecosystem. That is what is the blue carbon. Okay. So these mangrove system, when you restore mangroves, what happens is that actually by the process of photosynthesis captures a lot of carbon dioxide, right, through photosynthesis, and it stores it in the biomass. What do you mean by biomass? Either, it can be the roots, the trunk or the leaves, and finally in the waterlogged soils. And also mangroves are actually characterized by what conditions? That is anoxic soil condition, where the oxygen concentration is actually almost absent, okay. So here it actually creates a conducive environment for the storage of carbon. Now the second one is macroalgae. This is called as the kelp or the seaweed. These are also photosynthetic organisms. So they capture a lot of carbon dioxide when they grow, and when harvested they are actually transmitted to the ocean, okay. So when they are harvested, they are transported to the deep sea environments where they can actually absorb and store this carbon dioxide. Next one, ocean iron fertilization, where you actually release iron into the ocean in order to make it nutrient rich so that your phytoplanktons increase, that further absorbs carbon dioxide through photosynthesis and it actually keeps it there. And then finally, when the phytoplanktons die, what happens? It is actually preserved in the soil. In the ocean bed. Next one, artificial upwelling description. Here we need to bring the nutrient rich deep water to the surface. Again, it actually enhances the growth of phytoplankton. Next is terrestrial biomass dumping. Okay. So what does this mean? You actually bring the terrestrial biomass like the agriculture residues, etc., which are organic, and then you actually store it here under the ocean, okay, so that your CO2 is captured and it is sequestered. Now these are certain biotic approaches, that is nature based solutions. What are the abiotic approaches or the engineered solutions is what we need to see, okay. First one is ocean alkalinity enhancement. This is nothing but you need to introduce your alkaline materials like it can be silica, it can be lime, etc. If you introduce this, what happens? It converts this particular carbon dioxide into stable dissolved inorganic carbon molecules, which actually stays there for a long time. And this potential method, it actually has a potential of sequestering 1 to 15 billion tons of carbon dioxide, okay. And also the duration can be so many years, for centuries. Now moving on, the artificial downwelling. That is, you actually have to take, upwelling and downwelling. Like upwelling is the ocean bottom water actually comes to the surface, where artificial downwelling is you are actually taking the surface water that is rich in carbon dioxide you are taking it underneath, okay. So this is what is artificial downwelling. Next is direct CO2 removal from the seawater with CCS, that is carbon capture as well as storage techniques. And now you're going to store the carbon in other, geological formations under the, ground, etc. So these are the different methods. So this particular marine carbon dioxide removal becomes very, 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 very important because climate change is a lot in the topic in the news, right? You had the COP29 also. So what are the outcomes, India's, participation, and how far India has actually fared in curbing the menace of climate change, all that becomes very, very important, okay. So this is one of the diagrams where you can actually see the marine biomass. You can see marine biomass for bioenergy in CCS. CCS is nothing but carbon capture and storage. So you have the storage of carbon dioxide over here, and then you can see direct CO2 removal from seawater. Again, carbon capture and storage. This is artificial upwelling. You are actually bringing the nutrient rich water on top of it so that you actually enable the growth of the phytoplanktons there. And then you have artificial downwelling where you move this one over here. And then we have the terrestrial biomass dumping, bringing the agriculture residues that are organic over here. And then we have the macro algae farms. This is known as kelp, okay. And this is the seagrass, the mangroves restoration, that is the blue carbon restoration. All this becomes very, very important, okay. So now, having done this, let's actually move to our last article for discussion. Trump wants BRIC nations of 100% tariffs if they undermine the US dollars. So as you know, in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this particular grouping of BRICS as well as the concept of de-dollarization. And this becomes very, very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination. Under international relations, bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreements involving India or affecting India's interest, okay. So now let's quickly move forward. There has been a previous year question in the year 2014, okay. So it has asked about the BRICS grouping. So you know these regional groupings become very, very important. As I told you in the initial intro section itself, that is the President-elect Mr. Donald Trump has actually warned the BRICS nations. See, if you're going to come up with any other currency that is going to undermine the value of my United States dollars, then I will actually give you a sanction of up to 100% tariffs you need to pay if you are actually trading with my country. So that is what Donald Trump had actually said. Now let us see how this becomes important for our discussion. So before getting into it, let us actually discuss what are BRICS. It is, and what is BRICS? It is an intergovernmental organization, okay. So initially the term BRIC, BIRC, that was coined back in the year 2001, okay. So this was actually by a British economist. His name was Jim O'Neill, okay. And here it actually stood for Brazil, Russia, India as well as China. And this got officially established during the inaugural meeting of the BRIC foreign ministers in 2006, and finally in 2010 South Africa actually joined the grouping, and this was also one of the PYQs in your prelims examination. Now if you see, this particular grouping actually constitutes around 40 to 45% of the global population. It actually constitutes around 30% of the world GDP, and if you see 25% of the world trade. Okay, so this data is very, very important. And who are the members of BRICS? Earlier it was actually 4, then it became 5 with South Africa actually joining in 2010. Now you have 9, okay. So you have Brazil, Russia, India, China, followed by Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt as well as UAE. So you have 9 members right now. So all this is very, very important. So the leadership structure of the BRICS actually rotates yearly among the member countries following a sequence. What sequence is that? It is B So first is BRICS, BRICS. They will actually have the presidency like that. It will rotate. So if you see in 2021, India actually had the leadership, or the it was actually chairing it. Okay. Now moving forward, de-dollarization. So why this de-dollarization is actually in the news? What is de-dollarization? That is when you think that your dependence on dollars for international trade and finances have to be reduced. That is called as de-dollarization. That is, you're wanting another currency, or you want another system in order to run your transactions, that is trade, right? So that is called as de-dollarization, and BRICS members actually, they are looking for the de-dollarization in order to have an equitable global financial system. What do you mean by equitable global financial system? In the global financial system, almost 80% of the trade and its transactions are happening by the US dollars. Okay, so they actually want a de-dollarization, that is, move away from the dollars. Why? One, because US dollar, since 80% of the transactions are happening, what happens? You have the US central bank, right? Like RBI is a central bank for India. We have the Fed, that is the central bank. The increase or decrease or any kind of alteration in the Fed rates, like our repo rate, or like our reverse repo, etc. What happens? Any changes will actually affect the entire economy. That is the global economy. That is one of the reasons. And also the second reason is that US can actually use this dominance of dollars in order to impose sanctions specifically on countries like Russia, Iran, etc. So that is why the countries are actually aspiring to move away, okay, and get their own payment system. So de-dollarization, Russia has actually said, yeah, let's actually get our own payment system, or let us at least come up with the BRICS currency. So that's what Russia has actually said. And China is actually coming up with a central bank digital currency, or a digital yuan, okay, for cross-border trade. Similarly, if you see reactions from other countries, see, India has always maintained a very pragmatic stand, okay. So it has actually said that, of course, yes, we need this dollars for our economic growth and stability, but also we can focus on promoting our regional currency for bilateral trade, okay. That is what? That is, we can actually trade in rupees, is what India actually says. And South Africa and other nations, specifically like Iran, they are actually saying that no, we are very scared of being imposed by, by sanctions by the United States. So what happens? This is actually disproportionately affecting the developing countries. So that is why they are saying no, it is better to actually have an alternate currency. So this is what the other members have actually told. Now moving forward, why is US dollar dominant in the international trade? Very important to understand. So actually what happened is, the trade, that is the transaction between two parties, okay, that is person A and person B, the transaction actually initially took place by in terms of barter system. Okay, what is barter system? I give you one good, that is, I give you this pen and you give me another good. Okay, so that was the barter system initially in the ancient days. This is how it actually started. Then what happens is that different empires and different countries actually came up with their metallic currency, that is, you can say coins. So what happened? The goods were exchanged and sold or bought for coins, okay. But then what happened? For example, certain countries have copper coins, some of them actually have silver coins. So in order to bring a standardized model and order to reduce the minting of coins by the different countries, what happens is that they actually said, now we need to bring a global standard. That is, there has to be barter, or there has to be transaction only in terms of gold. That is, countries, all those countries which actually abound in gold can actually now involve in trade, okay, that is in selling as well as buying. So that is what is that actually resulted in gold, or global gold standard. So establishing this, what happens is that, or what happened was that, all the European nations, now they want to mine gold. They actually started, reaching out to other countries, especially if you see the Spanish people as well as Portuguese, they actually went right up to Central America, where there was the Aztec as well as the Inca civilizations, okay, which actually abound in gold. So they actually started going in search of gold, okay. So now what happened? All the European countries actually had a lot of gold reserves with them, and they started transacting in gold, okay. Now what happened? The Second World War, the World War actually broke out. So when the World War actually broke out, what happened here? US actually played a major role, okay, because first one, the growth or the advancement of US was actually high, and then what happened? It actually served as a supplier of weapons, okay, as well as military assistance to all the countries that was actually fighting war. That is, it used to provide to the UK, it actually used to provide to Russia, etc. And they actually got traded for gold. So ultimately what happened? All of them brought and they accumulated their reserves in the United States. So there was a period where United States actually had 90% of reserves of gold with it, okay, in order to because it was actually supplying this weapon as well as assistance. So 90% of the gold reserves was with respect to that of United States. Now, there was a twist in the tale. What happened is that after that, US actually got on to war with Vietnam. So this US-Vietnam War was a decade-long war. Okay, so when it was a decade-long war, what happened? US actually had a depletion or deterioration of all the gold reserves it actually had. So when the US actually abound in gold, what it actually said? Now there will be US dollar, and in this US dollar only you are actually supposed to trade. For example, how it happens? For example, let's take $35 is equal to 1 ounce of gold. So, if Russia actually wanted $35 from the US, it actually had to give 1 ounce of gold, okay. So, this was what was actually established. When was this established? It was established in 1945 after the establishment of the Bretton Woods Agreement, through which we have the international economic or monetary organizations like the IMF and the World Bank actually came into existence in order to look at these particular transactions, okay. However, when there was a decade-long war in Vietnam, US had actually lost most of its reserves, and that is where we had the president, Mr. Richard Nixon. He actually said, now your dollars won't be pegged to gold, but it is actually pegged by the market situations, that is the supply as well as the demand. So this is what in history was called as Nixon's shock. Okay, so this is what is the history, and from this actually happened in 1971, and even then what happened, the US dollars was actually preferred as one of the safest currencies, and it actually happens to be the one of the predominant currencies in which the trade transactions are actually happening. So understood this? Having understood, let us actually quickly go through this. The Bretton Woods legacy. So this actually came up in 1944, where US dollar became the global reserve currency pegged to gold. I told you the story. They actually said that if $35 was required, this is just an example, okay, I need to give you 1 ounce of gold. So this was actually happening by the establishment of IMF as well as the World Bank, etc. Now what happened? The gold standard actually got removed. Why? In 1971 by Nixon's shock. But still, what happened is that the dollar retained its dominance in the global trade and finance. Why? Because of the global trust and stability. That is, US is actually considered to be, what to say, one of the most stable political system. They actually say that their economy, their infrastructure, advancements, everything is actually so up to the standard. So people like investors, everybody, they actually want to hold their assets in terms of dollars, okay. So that is what they have, a rich political system, making the dollar a safe haven currency. Next one, even during the crisis of the 2008 recession, the preferred currency was the dollar for investors as well as the central banks, okay. Moving on, the next one, if you see the US financial markets, US is actually said to have the largest and most liquid financial markets. What do you mean by liquid financial markets? That is, if I have an asset and I have to actually sell it or buy the asset, I can actually do it without disturbing the economy. And I can do that in the best possible way by converting it only through means of dollars. So this is what it is. It's the largest and the most liquid financial markets in the world. And if you see the New York Stock Exchange, which is nothing but the US Treasury bond market, as well as the Federal Reserve's monetary policies. I told you, right? Federal Reserve is like RBI in India. It brings about monetary policies in order to keep inflation under check. These all create the strong incentives for global entities in order to hold the dollar dominated assets. And also petrodollar system. Since 1977, 1970s, if you see, the global oil trade has actually been between India and US and the other countries in terms of dollars only. So this also had, for example, if I actually have to buy dollar from say Russia, okay, so I need to actually give them dollars, right? For that I need to buy dollars from the US. So this actually created a global demand for the US dollars. So this is also one of the reasons. And also you have the SWIFT network. This is nothing but Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. So this is a global messaging network, and that actually enables cross-border payments. Okay. So all the countries which was actually using this particular SWIFT network, since this SWIFT network actually had preference on using the US dollars, all the countries also had to follow that. And also US actually uses this particular dominance of dollars in order to impose economic sanctions on the global community like Iran, Venezuela, as well as Russia. That is why these countries actually want to move away from it and want to have a separate currency for their trade transactions. Okay, so this is the concept of de-dollarization. Now let us quickly solve the main practice question. So today it is about India's urban areas, how they are facing an increased burden of the NCDs, particularly among the marginalized communities. They are asking to analyze the causes as well as the challenges associated with it and the initiatives and recommendations to mitigate it. So you know that you start the approach answer with an introduction where you say that we have a significant increase in NCD, particularly the marginalized communities who are focused, who are concentrated in these slums, etc., are actually there, including diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. This has actually been a major challenge in India. What are the causes? We know there are lifestyle causes, the environmental causes, like you have the pollution and hazardous working environments, socio-economic conditions, and also we have under health challenges, we have inadequate health infrastructure, rising inequality of the people, etc. All that is there. And finally, the policy recommendations where we need to enhance the primary health care, we need to leverage the technology, also bring about community engagement as well as participation of different stakeholders in order to integrate the health along with the urban policy or urban planning and policies. Okay, so this is your body. And moving forward, we actually write a conclusion that solving or dealing with India's NCDs, particularly in the areas, this actually requires a multi-pronged approach involving prevention, healthcare strengthening, and community awareness. Okay, so this is what is your practice question for the day. And now moving forward, see, these prelims practice questions are those which had been taken by the previous educator, that is Pratik sir had actually discussed about these on Saturday, right? So now let us actually solve that, and the questions for today we will actually be posting it here, and you will actually be solving and providing the answers in the comment section, and this you can solve it for better explanation from the website. Okay, so this question is the question of Saturday's DNA's discussion. So which of the following statements regarding the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services (INCOIS) is or are correct? It was established in 1999 under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Is it Environment, Forest and Climate Change? No, it is Ministry of Earth Sciences. So the first statement is wrong. Next one, INCOIS is headquartered in Hyderabad and operates as a unit of the Earth System Science Organization, New Delhi. Yes, this is correct. The Tsunami Early Warning Center at INCOIS operates a real-time tsunami alert system using seismic data and ocean sensors. Yes, this is also correct. And Sarath, that is Search and Rescue Aid Tool, is a software developed by Incois to assist in tracking the missing objects or people at sea using real-time ocean data. So this is also correct. So since 2, 3 and 4 are correct, your answer will be option C. I hope all of you got this right by solving the previous day questions. Okay. Now moving on to the second question. Which isotope of uranium? Yes, here you would have actually heard about the article on Iran enriching its uranium, right? So already there has been a question on uranium, thorium, plutonium, all these things you need to actually know. So here the question reads, which isotope of uranium is a fissile material sustaining a nuclear chain reaction? So here the answer will be U-235. Okay, so U-235 is actually the least of the two isotopes. Okay, so uranium actually has two isotopes, U-235 and U-239, right? So here this is actually very abundant inside uranium, but this is actually very least, that is it constitutes only about 0.7 percentage. Okay, but it is actually required. This is required in order to sustain your nuclear fission or a chain reaction. So this is what is actually required. So U-235 is actually the answer. Now moving forward, this question is with respect to today's discussion, and here if you see, it is with respect to the women participation rate, that is the labor force participation of women, and what has been the observation of the ILO. So this particular answer, actually you can answer that in the comment section below, and also you can take this question up and solve your tests on MCQs in our website. Okay. Now moving forward, the next question, what is ocean ion fertilization? It refers to which of the following? Here we actually discussed, right, regarding the marine carbon removal technique. We have actually discussed about this ocean ion fertilization. So again, I've actually given you a hint what could be the answer. So you need to solve it in the website. And the last question is, which of the following statements about BRICS and de-dollarization efforts are correct? So BRICS is actually an intergovernmental organization. Here it has actually given the number of countries over here, and then the concept of BRICS was first introduced by which person, and with the inclusion of all the other countries. No, South Africa was not there, right, in 2001. So you guys know that this is not the correct statement. Next one, the BRICS group has been exploring alternatives to the US dollar in international trade and finance as a part of broader de-dollarization effort. We discussed this. And the next one, US dollar dominance in global trade is largely due to its role in the petrodollar system, the SWIFT network and US financial markets. If you had actually understood today's discussion on this particular topic, it would actually be a cakewalk for you to solve this particular MCQ, which again we insist you to go to the website and to comment your answer in the comment section below. So with this, we've actually come to the end of our DNA session. Hope it was actually interesting. For more such interesting topics as well as knowledge bites, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. We'll meet again soon. Thank you and have a good day.